Welcome to the Faith and Family Ministry Leader Podcast, thoughtful conversations for leaders navigating family ministry in the local church today. I'm your host, Tim Shepard, and today we're going to get really pointed on the topic of children's ministry as family ministry. So we're making a pivot here for our children's pastors, maybe even senior pastors looking on and listening, going, okay, how do we maybe start to shift this perspective from children's ministry to family ministry? And I got 3 children's pastors here sitting before me. So I want to hear this from you guys' perspective as leaders who have actually made this pivot and made the shift of going, we're not going to just see this as children's ministry. We're going to see it as family ministry. What has that looked like in your church context? Ellen, let's go to you first.
Okay. I think for me, it's been the ahas of as a children's pastor, what is going to make me most effective? What is going to make the biggest impact in the life of a child?
Wow.
And the bare facts are I only have about 35 hours a year with a child in a typical church setting. And so how am I going to maximize that? And the only way that I know of is to infiltrate or influence those that have them the other 8,700 hours in the year, which is the parents.
Yeah. So instead of having them kind of embrace what you're doing, you're going, okay, no, I'm actually coming to make it into your home and go, okay, how can we bring the life of faith into your home rather than you only finding it here? I love that.
And it's the best way to do it together, too. Our mission statement of our children's ministry is to partner with parents to connect kids to Jesus. So it's not my job to connect kids to Jesus all by myself. I'm one person or one team or one church. My job is to partner with you as the parent, caregiver, grandparent to connect your kids to Jesus. Let's do this together because ultimately that's scriptural too. It's not just the church's job. It's to help equip parents and families to do it during their 8,700 hours. Let's do it. Let's do it together to connect your kids to Jesus and then help them form their own independent relationships with Jesus.
Yeah, so good. So good.
I think what's part of that for us is that looking at not just kids' time in kids' ministry, right? Of looking at it as a whole, that we're not just with them, we're not just partnering with the parents while they're in our particular age group, but looking at it from the time they're born all the way through till they go from kids ministry to junior high and high school and student ministries and building those relationships. And it is a mind shift, right? Because it's very easy to become siloed in our thought processes and what we do in the function in just those 35 hours, right? And so it's that shift of saying, I'm not just looking at the 35 hours that they're in a program, and I'm not just looking at my specific age group. I'm looking at families and relationships and relationship within the church from each stage of development. And then how do we partner? How do we come alongside parents and not bring parents to our side and what we're doing, what we think, but what's going on in your world, in your life, in your home, and how can we come alongside you in that through the trajectory of your child's life.
So good.
Right.
So
and
good.
keeping the end in mind.
Yes.
Yeah.
Both for us and for parents. Let's all remember, what is it that we're after?
Right.
Yeah.
We're after.
What's the end goal?
That's right. Is for kids, human beings at every age and stage of life to be doing that in a vibrant, healthy, growing relationship with Jesus.
Yeah.
Right.
So how can I facilitate that at each age and stage that you're in, and helping parents to see that really is what I'm after. I'm not just after kids who don't embarrass me. Or, you know.
Kids who are well behaved.
Yes, exactly.
It does make me think of Dr. Michelle's statement in Spiritual Parenting when she says that what we're talking about here, it might be 7 Family Ministry Essentials, the essence of going after taking childhood belief and transforming it into lifelong faith, right? We're seeing something with the end in mind. Like our objective is not just to have an excellent weekly program that, kids enjoy, kids like coming to. Are they having fun at? It's no. The objective here is to go, we're sowing seeds and we're investing truth here that's the hope is to bear fruit for decades and generations
Right.
to come. I want to get a little bit into some of the practicals of how you guys do this here, but before we pivot there, I'd like to just get some like cultural perspective. I think even for our listeners to go, okay, what's the children's ministry landscape right now? Like, if you looked at doing children's ministry 20 years ago versus doing children's ministry today, I mean, you walk through any given church now, there is a massive emphasis on safety, right? Just in the building. And how are we making sure that classrooms and ministry programs and events are extremely safe? And so you're asking those questions. Ministry safe protocols are extremely, as they should be, strict and very emphasized right now. But the cultural landscape for our families right now is a little different right now, and how kids spending time on devices, things like that. What are the challenges that you as children's pastors are seeing right now that like are very prevalent in the lives of like the kids in your ministry?
I've two that just come to mind immediately are time and technology. Families are so busy. They have just filled their schedules to the hilt. There's this mindset that I have to give my child every opportunity to excel and be the best at everything. So I've got to make sure that they're in all the academic things and pursuing every athletic sport and opportunity there, and every creative opportunity and every social opportunity, that there is just this mindset that has filled every moment. That is a real challenge for parents. And when we start having these conversations about taking on the spiritual side, there's a little bit of initial, I don't have time.
When am I going to do that?
It's like, I am lucky to be coming to church, 35 times a year, whatever. So that is a biggie. And technology is a huge one. Just the distraction that it is for us as human beings, as parents, and for kids. It's a real thing.
I think even how prevalent it is for kids now than it used to be. I just had a conversation with a parent this last week where she has a 20-year-old and then she has a 9-year-old. And the 9-year-old was starting to Google things and see things. And so we were having a conversation about conversations she needed to have with her 9-year-old. She was like, well, Megan, I didn't do this with my other kid this early. And I was like, well, yeah, we're in 2024. The things that your other kid, you didn't see things as young, or you didn't have access to things as young. Kids, younger and younger are having access to more and more. So conversations are then happening earlier and earlier. And parents are having a hard time, can have a hard time grasping that and swallowing that hard truth that you might start having to have conversations earlier than you did when you were a kid, or if you have older kids, it looks, conversations are looking different.
I think a big part of each of those things is we talk about parents and their time, and people are busy, and how much younger we need to have conversations. And I think part of that busy, part of that full feeling is what families are experiencing culturally. What are kids exposed to, the content? And I think parents are having to navigate that too, and that feels heavy, and that feels overwhelming, where there are so many things that are vying for their time. And when they're looking at, how do I help set my child up for success in the future? And there's all these things that need to go there. And I need to know the right kids to put my kids in social groups with. And because we have a limited amount of time with our kids, right, before we launch them. 17 or 18 years feels like a really long time, but in perspective, it's not. And so
very brief.
You can understand that pressure. But also what we have is a part of our world now in our conversations, our little world in the big world sense, is children are dealing with anxiety far more and far earlier than they were before.
So
and what are the implications of that, of mental health in children at much younger ages, where we're hearing things that are heartbreaking, that there are children who are like 4th and 5th graders who are contemplating suicide. That's real. That's heavy. And is that going to take a parent's attention? Yes, and it should, right? And not only that, if they're having conversations about gender identity and who am I and who God made me to be, And I think sometimes within church culture, we think we deal with that when they're preschoolers and we're little, and now we know, but that's not the full picture.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes what's hard is our perspective can get stuck in that, well, they're not here, they're not coming here. And we can get frustrated, as ministry leaders and volunteers are going, parents, get frustrated with parents. But the whole thing is, let's not get frustrated with them and see what are they experiencing, what are they balancing, and engage with them and see, gosh, as a children's pastor, that is my utmost responsibility, right? So to see, what are you carrying? How can I carry that with you? And sometimes, how can I carry that for you?
Yeah.
Right? Let me carry this for you for a bit, so you can breathe. And that is a great privilege. It's a great responsibility. And I do think that's changed the landscape of things. And I think there's a tendency for us to just be really myopic and focus on program of a Sunday. But ministry is bigger than that 1 hour, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's really shifted within the culture of the church over the last few years. And so that definitely impacts what we do and how we do it.
Yeah. And the necessity to meet parents where they are.
Right.
Because the other big piece that I see a lot of is parents young in their own faith or not even yet
Right.
in a personal relationship with Jesus. And we're talking to them about these spiritual conversations, and they're like, I'm not even sure what I believe.
Yeah.
I had a conversation with a parent not too long ago to our last kid's baptism, and her 4th grader wanted to be baptized. And he asked his mom, said, have you been baptized? And she said, no. And he said, do you want to be baptized with me? And she said, I'm just not ready yet. And she was telling me that. And I said, thank you so much for sharing that with me and for allowing your child the freedom and not keeping them from taking advantage of this opportunity, how the Lord was leading him in this moment. And then saying, we'll see what happens, for me personally. So I think that's a real place that we are too. In the world
we are
today.
in a unique place of going, okay, is even when you have so many atypical families now in your church, atypical family situations, we're seeing a lot more of hey, is faith beginning with the younger generation? Is it transcending up to the older generation? So grandma and grandpa's bringing the kiddos to church. Grandkids are going home, sharing faith with mom and dad who have no interest in coming to church right now. And so, okay, how does this work? And I love what you both just said right there, where it's we're going to meet parents where they're at versus the general assumption has been we'll develop the ministry program and then come meet the bar. You know what I mean? You show up and be present, all of those sorts of things. The difficult part of this is when you start to embrace this shift to I'm going to run an excellent children's ministry program to I'm going to pivot and I'm going to look at the family as a whole and see how we can contextualize the gospel for kids to the family. You just took on a whole other other initiative that goes, oh, this might have been more than I signed up for. So maybe to pivot from there and all of your experiences, what is something very simple and practical you could give a children's pastor who's going, okay, I want to start this. I want to start shifting my perspective to meeting families where they're at. Where would you say, hey, here's how you can start? How do you start kind of building that model? We've heard some different things on the podcast here about how to maybe inform parents of here's what we're teaching your children, that sorts of stuff. But how would you go about starting to make that pivot to your families? Christy, let's start with you.
I think it's begins with relationship. Right. And we've talked about that a lot, like building relationship with our families and with our parents, because that gives you the foundation and it actually earns that credibility and that relational equity to have this conversation.
Yeah.
Because I think when this is our world, our spiritual conversations, scripture, all these things become our world, we make the assumption that that's everybody and everybody's coming in at the same spot.
Yeah.
And so I think that we have to have relational equity with our families. And I think that that's just foundational no matter what we do and everything. But I think that when we start there, we can speak into things and we can share things and have those vulnerable conversations and invite people into these spiritual conversations and about family, because it's so personal, right? And how I'm spiritually leading my family is super personal. And it just starts the ball rolling, is to further discipleship conversations about their lives and things like that. So I really am all about relationship. I think that's so important. And it's hard. In the scope of everything before us, it's really hard. But I think we need to make it a priority.
Relationship before practice.
And start there. For sure.
Megan?
I think also inviting parents in to your ministry, that it's our ministry.
Voice at the table.
Right. Yes. And so it's, hey, maybe our lesson this Sunday is about what it means to say yes to Jesus. Parents, come on in and hear how we explain it. Here's the terminology we use. Here's a Bible story that's great to be used to explain this. Here's some tools to use. Come here, come be a part. And then take that with you to help start the conversation at home. Because it can feel daunting, especially if you're a parent who doesn't even know where to start.
Yeah.
It's like, come on in. Come hear how we explain it. Come be a part of the conversation here, and then let us support you as you take this to your home.
I love that.
Yeah,
Ellen?
I think inviting parents, relationship with parents. I think as children's pastors, too, taking advantage of natural opportunities that are already in the life of the church. So child dedication, baptism, start with one thing. And before a child is dedicated, connect with those parents, have a conversation about what does this mean, and how to, whatever the event is, the dedication or the baptism, that this is a starting point. And here's a way to continue this at home and throughout their whole life. So just kind of starting naturally where they are and where you are, and also just keeping it simple. It doesn't have to be this big, oh my gosh, we have to do all of these big things or new classes or new programs or create all this material. After, give them one thing we've done is given parents one prayer to pray every week over their kids. Sometimes they don't even know what to say. It's like, you say, pray for my kids. I don't know what to say. So we give them a prayer and we text it to them and say, hey, pray this for them. At bedtime, before they go out the door to school, in the car ride, pray this. That's an easy first step. So keep it simple for them and for you.
Yeah. Inviting parents to be a part of the journey. That's huge. This is such a rich conversation, I think, for both the local church to go, okay, how do we start looking at bringing mom and dad or parent and caregiver into this? And I think just for mom and dad to go, oh, okay, wait a minute. I have a role to play in the well-being of my child's faith and what God is doing in their life. So good. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you are looking to go, okay, what are some maybe first steps that I can give to my families to go, here's how I want to start empowering you in the home. We have a plethora of resources for you with the Initiative for Faith and Family that you can find at the-iff.com. One that I do want to highlight for you is our spiritual parenting resource. It's a in-home curriculum for you to be able to give to your parents that help them do exactly what we're talking about here. Open up the scriptures with their kid at the dinner table. Pray, have a couple discussion questions. It gives them some opportunities to bless their kids. So this is just kind of a first touch point for you to go, hey, if you're wanting to start developing a livelihood of faith in the family, in the home, here's some practical ways to do it. So thank you so much for joining us. We hope you have an amazing day. Grace and peace.